The flight that changed everything. Her hand trembled as she gripped the armrest, eyes fixed on the narrow aisle of the airplane. The cabin lights flickered for a moment, then steadied. Around her, passengers murmured quietly, but the air felt thick with tension. Suddenly, a sharp cry shattered the calm. "Help! Please, someone!" It was the pregnant woman, seated 2 rows ahead, her voice cracked with panic, breath shallow and rapid. The man beside her froze, staring at the woman's bulging belly. The plane, hundreds of miles above the ground, suddenly felt too small to hold the growing fear in that cramped space. No one moved, no one spoke, except one boy. He was young, maybe in his early 20s, with dark skin and eyes that burned with a strange kind of calm. Not the calm of someone detached, but the calm of someone ready to act. The boy, no, the young man, pushed out of his seat, his voice firm but gentle. "She's having a baby. We need to help her now." The passengers shifted nervously. A few whispered, "Who is he? What can he do?" But he didn't wait for permission. He knelt by the woman, his hands steady as he searched her face for signs of distress beyond the obvious. "My name is Elijah," he said quietly. "I'm trained. I know what to do." That declaration, simple as it was, drew both relief and suspicion. How could a stranger on a plane know about childbirth emergencies? Elijah ignored the questions swirling around him and focused on the woman. Her breathing was uneven, sweat beading on her forehead, despite the cool cabin air. The pregnant wife of a millionaire, her identity whispered in hushed tones across the cabin, was minutes away from delivering, not in a hospital but in the metal tube soaring miles above the earth. The flight attendants scrambled to clear space, fear flashing across their faces. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're diverting to the nearest airport. Please stay calm." Elijah looked up, his gaze locking with the millionaire sitting stiffly in the seat beside his wife. The man's face was pale, eyes wide with helplessness. Elijah whispered, "You're going to be okay. We just have to stay calm." As minutes dragged into what felt like hours, the tension became unbearable. Elijah's hands worked swiftly and confidently. Passengers watched in awe, some in disbelief, and then came the moment. A sudden cry from the woman, a wet rush, and the tiny wail of new life. A baby was born miles above the clouds. The cabin erupted in applause, tears streaming down faces. Elijah handed the newborn to the millionaire's wife, who sobbed with exhaustion and relief. The millionaire, still trembling, reached out to Elijah. "Thank you. Thank you so much. How can I ever repay you?" Elijah looked the man in the eye, his expression unreadable. "There's one thing I want, just one." The room fell silent. "What is it?" the millionaire asked cautiously. Elijah's voice was steady, "A promise that you'll listen, truly listen as to what I have to say." And in that moment, the millionaire's eyes filled with tears, but not all of them were tears of gratitude. What Elijah said next would change everything. The promise that shattered silence. The cabin, still buzzing from the miraculous birth, seemed to hold its breath as Elijah's words hung in the air. A promise, a request so simple, yet so heavy, that the millionaire Robert found himself struggling to comprehend it. He swallowed hard, his fingers tightening around the armrest. His wife, Amelia, leaned back exhausted, but glowing with the fragile new life. Resting on her chest, their newborn son, wrapped in a thin blanket, was peaceful, oblivious to the storm brewing above the clouds. Robert's voice was barely above a whisper. "Listen, what do you mean? Why now?" Elijah's dark eyes bore into him, steady and unwavering. "Because what you don't know, what you refuse to see, is about to destroy everything you think you have." The words struck Robert like a punch to the gut. His mind raced. Who was this boy? How did he know so much? And why did his presence feel like the thin thread holding his perfect world together? The passengers averted their eyes, sensing the tension thickening the air. Flight attendants exchanged nervous glances but said nothing. The plane was still hours from landing, and what happened next would decide the fate of everyone on board. "Sir," Elijah continued, voice calm but firm, "I'm not here for money. I don't want your riches or your thanks. I want the truth heard. And if you refuse, everything you love will fall apart." Robert's heart pounded. He looked at Amelia, still pale but recovering, and then at their sleeping son. What truth could threaten this moment? What nightmare was Elijah hinting at? "I don't understand," Robert said. "You're scaring me." Elijah shook his head slightly. "You don't have to understand now. Just promise me. Promise you'll listen when I'm done." Robert nodded slowly, trapped between fear and curiosity. Elijah took a deep breath and began. The secrets beneath the surface. Elijah's story didn't start with the flight or the birth. It started years ago, tangled in shadows and betrayals nobody expected. He spoke quietly, his voice carrying the weight of memories. "I knew your wife, Amelia, before you did. I knew her when she was desperate and alone." Robert's eyes narrowed, disbelief flashing across his face. "What are you saying? That my wife—" Elijah nodded. "Before you met her, before she became the woman you love and trust, she was someone else, someone fighting for survival in a world that didn't care." The passengers leaned in, drawn to the raw honesty in Elijah's tone. "I grew up in a neighborhood where secrets were currency. I saw things no child should see, and Amelia was there, caught in a storm of lies and danger." Robert's mind spun, his perfect Amelia struggling in the shadows? It was impossible. Elijah's gaze softened for a moment. "I don't judge her. I'm not here to accuse. I'm here to warn." He paused, then added, "Because someone from that past, someone who wants to hurt her, is coming. And it's not just her life on the line anymore." Robert's breath hitched. "Who?" Elijah's eyes flicked toward the plane's windows, then back to Robert's face. "I can't say yet, but soon you'll see signs. Lies will unravel. Trust will shatter, and you'll have to decide who you really know." A hidden threat. The plane's turbulence mirrored the turmoil inside Robert's chest. Amelia stirred, blinking up at them, unaware of the storm Elijah had unleashed. Robert clenched his jaw, anger and fear colliding. "Why didn't you come forward sooner? Why wait until my wife was giving birth?" Elijah looked down, voice heavy. "Because I had to be sure. I had to protect her. And you, until now." He glanced around at the watching passengers, then back to Robert. "I'm risking everything by telling you this." Robert's mind raced. Was this a trap, a cruel joke, or the truth he never wanted to face? But one thing was clear. Elijah's presence was no accident. The boy who had saved Amelia and her unborn child was now demanding answers, and Robert had no choice but to listen. The millionaire's doubt as the plane began its descent. Robert's thoughts swirled like the clouds outside. His life, built on control, power, and carefully crafted images, was unraveling with every word Elijah spoke. He looked at Amelia again, her hand resting lightly on their son. The woman he loved seemed fragile, yet unbreakable. But what else? Was she hiding? Robert's doubt gnawed at him. Had he really known her at all? Was their marriage a fortress or a fragile illusion? Elijah's words echoed in his mind. "Trust will shatter." The plane touched down with a jolt. Passengers clapped, some relieved, others still wrapped in the tension of the story unfolding beside them. But Robert knew this was only the beginning. A new path asked. The plane taxied to the gate. Elijah rose and met Robert's gaze once more. "Remember, your promise," he said softly. Robert nodded, though his heart was heavy. There was no turning back, because the real journey, the one filled with betrayal, survival, and secrets, had just begun. Shadows from the past. Robert sat silently, In the back seat of his sleek black car, the city lights blurring past like fleeting memories. The hum of the engine was the only sound as he replayed Elijah's words over and over in his mind. Someone from Amelia's past is coming. The warning echoed, chilling him to the core. He glanced toward the rearview mirror, catching Amelia's reflection. Her eyes were distant, still fragile from the ordeal on the plane, yet there was a new hardness beneath the surface, a secret burden she carried alone. Robert's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He wanted to ask her about Elijah's claims, to demand the truth, but something held him back, a quiet fear that unraveling the past would destroy everything they had built. The arrival. That night, their mansion was filled with an eerie silence, a stark contrast to the chaos of the flight. Amelia rested in the guest room, the newborn cradled gently in her arms, while Robert paced the marble floors, restless. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. "You don't know. The whole story. Watch your back." Robert's heart skipped a beat. He stared at the screen, the words heavy with threat and mystery. He dialed Elijah's number, desperate for answers. "Elijah," Robert said when the call connected, voice tense. "Who sent that message?" There was silence. Then Elijah's calm voice replied, "It's a warning. Someone wants to keep the past buried." Uncovering the truth, determined, Robert decided to confront Amelia. The next morning he found her in the nursery, softly humming as she rocked their son. "Amelia," he began carefully, "Elijah said, someone from your past is threatening us. Is it true?" Amelia's eyes flickered with pain. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "There's something I've kept hidden," she confessed. "Before I met you, my life was far from safe. I was running from people who wanted to control me." Robert listened as she revealed pieces of a life filled with secrets, danger, and betrayal. She spoke of a ruthless man, a figure from a past she tried desperately to escape, whose shadow still loomed over her present. The enemy revealed. Elijah called again, this time meeting Robert in a quiet cafe away from prying eyes. "The man you're dealing with is Victor Marlowe," Elijah said. "He's dangerous, powerful, and ruthless, and he believes Amelia owes him." Robert's blood ran cold. Victor Marlowe, a name whispered in the darkest corners of the city, tied to crime, betrayal, and destruction. "Why her?" Robert asked. "Why now?" "Because she holds something Victor wants," Elijah replied. "Something that could ruin him if it gets out." Betrayal close to home. As the days passed, strange things began to happen. Unfamiliar cars parked near their home. Anonymous calls in the dead of night. A sense of being watched settled over the family. Robert's trust wavered, not just in the outside world, but within his own circle. One evening, his closest aide, Daniel, hesitated before confessing, "Sir, I think someone inside your company is leaking information to Marlowe." Betrayal from within was the worst kind. A dangerous plan. Robert and Elijah formed a fragile alliance, determined to protect Amelia and their son. They crafted a plan to expose Victor Marlowe and end the threat once and for all. But as they prepared to act, Amelia's strength returned, surprising them all. She was no longer the frightened woman from the plane, but a force ready to fight for her family's future. Together, they faced the storm ahead, with fear, hope, and a fierce determination. The darkness closing in, the blackout stretched on, swallowing the mansion in thick shadows. Robert's fingers tightened around his phone as the emergency lights flickered weakly, casting eerie glows on the walls. Amelia sat nearby, clutching their newborn, her eyes scanning the darkness as if expecting something or someone to emerge. Outside, the night was unnaturally still, a knock in the dark. Suddenly, the sharp rap of knocking on the front door shattered the silence. Robert froze. "Who is it?" he called, voice low but steady. No answer. Just the knocking again. slow, deliberate. Amelia stood, pulling a blanket tighter around their son. Robert moved cautiously toward the door, his mind racing. Could it be Victor Marlowe's men? Or worse, a traitor from inside their circle? He glanced at the security cameras, but the screens flickered and went blank. With a deep breath, Robert opened the door. The visitor, a figure, stepped inside, drenched from the rain, face hidden beneath a hood. "Who are you?" Robert demanded. Moving to block the way, the visitor pulled back the hood. It was Daniel, Robert's trusted aide. Daniel. Robert's voice betrayed shock and betrayal. Daniel's eyes were wild with fear. "I didn't want to involve you like this, but you need to know. Victor's closer than you think. He's inside your company, Robert. And he's planning something that will destroy everything." Robert's heart sank. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" Daniel shook his head. "I was scared. They have eyes everywhere, but I have proof. We need to act fast." The proof Daniel handed over, a small flash drive. "This has evidence of their plans, secret meetings, transfers, communications." Robert felt the weight of the device in his hand. It was the key to exposing the conspiracy, but also a beacon that would make them targets. Elijah arrived quietly. Behind them. "We need to get this to the authorities, but discreetly." Amelia nodded, her usual vulnerability replaced by fierce resolve. "I'm done running." A risky move. The group decided to meet a trusted contact at a nearby safe house, a place known only to Elijah and his network. As they left the mansion, shadows seemed to stretch and follow, a constant reminder that danger lurked in every corner. The safe house. Inside the dimly lit room, Elijah connected the flash drive to a laptop. Files opened, videos, messages, bank transfers, all pointing to a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power. Robert stared at the screen, disbelief turning to rage. "We've been betrayed," he said quietly, "by people I trusted." Betrayal. Unmasked, as they sifted through the evidence, a familiar face appeared repeatedly in the files. Someone close to Robert, someone he never suspected. "Daniel," Robert whispered, shock and hurt mingling. Daniel looked away, guilt etched across his face. "I had no choice. They threatened my family." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "How many lives will this destroy?" The plan shifts. The group realized they couldn't wait for the authorities. Victor's men were moving fast, and the betrayal cut too deep. "We take this to the public," Elijah said. "Expose the truth before it's buried." Robert nodded, his resolve hardening. "We'll fight, for Amelia, for our son, for everything." Fire and betrayal. The crack of gunfire echoed through the safe house, splintering the fragile silence. Of the night, Robert dove behind a sturdy wooden table, heart hammering as bullets tore through the thin walls. Amelia screamed, clutching their baby tightly, while Elijah and Daniel scrambled for cover. Chaos erupted. Fight or flight, Elijah's voice cut through the din. "Get to the back door. We can't let them trap us here." Robert grabbed Amelia's hand. "Move, now!" They darted through the dark rooms, the baby's soft cries blending with the relentless staccato of gunfire. A sudden crash behind them signaled the attackers breaking through the front. Time was running out. A narrow escape bursting through a side door. They plunged into the cold night air. Rain hammered down, mixing with sweat and tears. Elijah pulled out his phone, urgently calling for backup from his network. "We need extraction. Now." Robert's mind raced. Their enemies were ruthless, armed and closer than ever, Amelia whispered, voice shaking but fierce. "We have to end this. No more running." The turning point back at their safe location, Elijah unveiled a bold plan to use the evidence and their story to ignite a public outcry, forcing Victor Marlowe's empire into the light. But first, they needed to stay alive. Robert stared at the files, each revealing corruption, lies, and betrayal. Faces of powerful men intertwined with Victor's network. I never imagined it was this deep, he admitted. Elijah's eyes narrowed. It's deeper than you know. Betrayal cuts. Deep late one night, Robert received a message on his secure line, a photo of Amelia, alone and vulnerable, with a note, "You can't protect her." His blood ran cold. Victor's playing dirty, Daniel warned. They're using fear as a weapon. Robert clenched his fists. We'll fight. For her, for our son. Revealing the truth with Elijah's help, Robert arranged a live broadcast. The world would hear the story, the secrets, the betrayal, and the courage it took to stand against a dangerous enemy. Amelia, though hesitant, agreed. The strength she showed surprised them all. The broadcast began with Elijah narrating their story, footage and evidence rolling behind him, undeniable proof of the conspiracy. Robert watched as the world reacted. Shock, outrage, support. The fallout Victor Marlowe's empire began to crumble under the weight of the revelations. Arrests followed, and whispers of his downfall spread like wildfire. But victory was bittersweet. Amelia, exhausted but resolute, turned to Robert. "We survived. But the scars remain." Robert took her hand. "We're stronger now, together. Redemption and new beginnings." The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Robert sat beside Amelia, their hands intertwined, eyes fixed ahead. After months of turmoil, betrayal, and battle, the moment of reckoning had finally arrived. Victor. Marlowe's name echoed through the halls, no longer whispered in fear, but shouted in justice. The verdict, the judge's voice was steady, clear. Victor Marlowe is found guilty on all charges. A wave of relief swept through the room. Tears streamed down Amelia's cheeks, but this time they were tears of release, a catharsis for years of hidden pain. Robert squeezed her hand. "It's over." Elijah, standing quietly behind them, allowed himself a rare smile. The boy, who had once stepped onto that plane to save a life, had helped dismantle a dangerous empire, healing the wounds back at their home. Quiet settled in like a balm. Amelia held their son close, the baby now growing strong and healthy. "Do you regret not telling me the truth?" Robert asked softly one evening, watching her as the sun dipped behind the horizon. Amelia shook her head. "No, truth is the only thing that can set us free." They talked long into the night, about fear, hope, forgiveness, and what it truly meant to heal. A changed man, Robert reflected on everything that had happened, the secrets uncovered, the betrayals, and the moments of pure courage. He realized how much he had changed. "No amount of money or power can replace honesty and trust," he admitted aloud. "Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find who you really are." Elijah's departure. The day Elijah left, the house felt emptier. Amelia hugged him tightly. "You saved us all, in ways you don't even know." Elijah smiled, humble but proud. "I just did what was right." As he walked away, Robert watched the boy-turned-man disappear into the distance, a reminder that heroes can come from the most unexpected places. A new beginning life slowly returned to normal, but the scars remained, not as wounds, but as lessons etched into their hearts. Robert and Amelia built a future grounded in truth, love, and resilience. Their son's laughter filled the halls, a beacon of hope and renewal. The lesson: sometimes the darkest storms reveal the brightest light. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find who you really are. And sometimes a single act of courage can change lives forever. The end.